fifth-round pick just got the LeBron James treatment from Nike, and the NFL has absolutely no idea how to handle it. While 31 teams passed on Shedeur Sanders over and over again, watching him slide down draft boards like he was some undrafted free agent, Nike was already printing money with his face on it. Signature sneakers, player exclusives, a full-scale marketing campaign built around one word that's about to define an entire era of football: legendary. This isn't your typical rookie endorsement story. This isn't some local car dealership commercial or a regional sports drink nobody's ever heard of. This is Nike going all in on a quarterback that most NFL general managers apparently didn't want. And the contrast between how the league valued Shedeur Sanders and how the biggest athletic brand on the planet valued him tells you everything you need to know about what's really happening here. The old guard is terrified. The establishment is furious. And somewhere in Cleveland, a fifth-round quarterback is about to prove that draft position means absolutely nothing when you've already won before the game even started. But how did we get here? And why is everyone so angry about it? Here's what nobody wants to admit about the NFL. The league operates on a very specific set of unwritten rules. You get drafted high, you get the big endorsements. You prove yourself on Sundays, then you build your brand. You wait your turn, pay your dues, and maybe after a few Pro Bowl selections, companies start paying attention to you. Shedeur Sanders just threw all of that in the trash. Before he ever took a snap in an NFL regular season game, before he competed for a starting job, before he proved anything to anyone in the professional ranks, Nike handed him the keys to a kingdom that most players spend entire careers trying to access. And the timing of this deal is what makes it truly unprecedented. Shedeur signed with Nike before the draft. Let that sink in for a moment. At a time when everyone projected him as a first-round talent, when mock drafts had him going anywhere from pick 8 to pick 15, Nike locked him in. They saw what was coming. They understood his value when NFL front offices were still debating whether his arm was strong enough. Then the draft happened. And what unfolded over those 3 days in April became one of the most controversial slides in recent memory. Team after team passed on Shedeur. The first round came and went. Then the second. Then the third. By the time Cleveland finally called his name at pick 144, the football world was in complete shock. But here's the part that's driving NFL owners absolutely crazy. Nike didn't flinch. They didn't renegotiate. They didn't pull back their investment or quietly reduce the scope of the partnership. Instead, they doubled down. They pushed forward with signature sneakers, player-exclusive colorways, and a marketing campaign that treats Shedeur like he went first overall. The Gatorade deal stayed intact too. Think about the company Shedeur is keeping with that endorsement alone. Gatorade doesn't sign fifth-round quarterbacks. They sign generational talents who transcend their sports. They sign athletes whose faces belong on billboards in Times Square. They sign people like Caitlin Clark and LeBron James. And apparently, they sign Shedeur Sanders. The source material from industry insiders makes this crystal clear. These are deals that premier athletes get. Not promising athletes. Not developmental prospects with upside. Premier athletes. The elite of the elite. And Shedeur walked into the NFL with that level of corporate backing, while players drafted 50 spots ahead of him were still waiting for their phones to ring. What makes this even more significant is understanding what these deals actually include. This isn't just Nike sending free shoes and hoping Shedeur wears them during warm-ups. This is a comprehensive partnership that includes signature sneakers built around his personal brand, player-exclusive colorways designed specifically for him, and a promotional strategy that positions him as a cornerstone of Nike's football division. Sports Illustrated reported that Nike has heavily invested in Shedeur. Those words matter. Heavily invested means resources. It means marketing dollars. It means the full weight of the biggest athletic brand in the world standing behind a quarterback that most teams apparently didn't believe in. The promotional push started immediately after signing. Nike began featuring Shedeur across their social media platforms, treating him with the same reverence they show established superstars. They leaned into his legendary mantra during practice sessions and pregame content. They designed custom cleats that he's already been wearing, complete with handwritten messages that connect his personal story to the product. This level of attention for a rookie quarterback is rare enough. For a fifth-round rookie quarterback, it's absolutely unheard of. And that's precisely why the NFL establishment is so uncomfortable with what's happening. Because if Shedeur can command this kind of endorsement power without being drafted high, without starting games, without traditional validation from the league, what does that say about the draft process itself? What does that say about the millions of dollars teams spend on scouting departments designed to identify talent? It says they missed something. It says Nike saw value that 31 front offices couldn't recognize. It says the entire system of determining player worth might be fundamentally broken. And for owners who have built their franchises on controlling narratives and managing player expectations, that realization is keeping them up at night. The story of Shedeur's Nike deal actually begins long before draft night. To understand why this partnership matters so much, you have to rewind to when everyone still believed Shedeur Sanders was a top 15 lock. Coming out of Colorado, Shedeur put together one of the most impressive statistical seasons in recent college football memory. Over 4,000 passing yards, 37 touchdowns against just 10 interceptions. He won the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award, an honor given to the nation's top upperclassman quarterback. His accuracy was surgical. His decision-making was elite. His ability to perform under pressure was exactly what NFL scouts claim they're looking for. Most importantly, Shedeur passed the eye test. When you watched him play, you saw a quarterback who understood the position at a professional level. His footwork was refined. His release was quick. His ability to read defenses and make adjustments at the line showed a football IQ that typically takes years to develop. So when Nike approached him about a signature deal, nobody questioned it. Of course, the son of Coach Prime deserved premier endorsement treatment. Of course, a projected first-round quarterback should have major corporate partnerships locked in before draft night. This was standard procedure for elite prospects. The contract was signed. The marketing plans were developed. The sneaker designs were finalized. Everything was moving forward based on one reasonable assumption. Shedeur Sanders would be selected in the first round. Then the pre-draft process began revealing cracks in that assumption. Reports started surfacing about concerns with Shedeur's arm strength. Analysts who had praised him all season suddenly found reasons to drop him on their boards. Whispers circulated about whether NFL teams wanted to deal with the Coach Prime factor, whether having Deion Sanders as your quarterback's father would create complications that franchises preferred to avoid. The combine came and went. Shedeur performed well, but skeptics focused on perceived weaknesses rather than obvious strengths. His pro day generated buzz, but not the kind of overwhelming consensus that locks in top 10 status. Mock drafts that once had him going as high as pick 5 started sliding him toward the middle of the first round, then toward the end, then into the second round. By draft week, the narrative had completely shifted. What was once a coronation became a controversy. Teams that supposedly loved Shedeur were now reportedly passing because of fit concerns or roster construction or whatever excuse allowed them to justify ignoring elite talent. Night 1 arrived. The first round unfolded. Quarterback after quarterback heard their names called. Shedeur watched from home as Cam Ward went first overall, as other signal callers found their professional homes. His phone stayed silent. Night 2 brought more of the same. The second round passed without Cleveland or anyone else pulling the trigger. The third round came and went. By the time the fourth round concluded, Shedeur Sanders had become the biggest story in sports for all the wrong reasons. How does a projected top 15 pick fall to the fifth round? How does a quarterback with those statistics, that pedigree, and that proven ability to perform on the biggest stages get passed over more than 140 times? The theories are endless. Some point to arm strength, concerns that scouts apparently valued more than actual production. Others suggest the Coach Prime factor scared off franchises who didn't want the media circus. A few industry insiders have hinted at something more troubling, that the league collectively decided to send a message about who controls player narratives in the NFL. Whatever the explanation, the result was unprecedented. Shedeur experienced the kind of draft slide that typically destroys endorsement deals. When your projected value drops that dramatically, sponsors usually run for cover. They renegotiate contracts. They reduce commitments. They distance themselves from the controversy. Nike did none of that. Gatorade did none of that. Instead, both companies stood firm. They honored their agreements. They continued pushing forward with marketing campaigns designed for a first-round pick, even though their guy went in the fifth round. And that decision speaks volumes about how these brands evaluate talent versus how the NFL evaluates talent. Nike's entire business model depends on identifying superstars before they become superstars. They've built a global empire on recognizing potential that others miss. Michael Jordan wasn't a sure thing when Nike signed him. LeBron James was a high school kid. Kobe Bryant was a teenager with big dreams. Every single time, Nike saw something special before the rest of the world caught on. And they're seeing that same something in Shedeur Sanders right now. The draft slide didn't change their evaluation. If anything, it probably reinforced their conviction, because Nike understands something that NFL general managers apparently forgot. Draft position doesn't determine destiny. Never has, never will. Let's talk about what everyone actually wants to see: the sneakers themselves. When Coach Prime posted that Instagram photo a few weeks back, most people scrolled right past it. Just another social media update from the Sanders family. Nothing unusual, nothing worth stopping for. But if you looked closely at what was sitting in the background, you would have noticed something that should have broken the internet immediately. Unreleased Nike sneakers, multiple colorways. And on the back heel of each pair, one word that changed everything: legendary. Not just printed normally, either. The legendary branding appears upside down, flipped, different. It's the kind of subtle design choice that carries enormous meaning. When you're looking at the shoes from behind, you see legendary inverted. But when Shedeur is making plays on the field, when cameras catch his feet moving in the pocket, when highlights circulate across social media, that legendary text reads perfectly right side up. It's intentional, it's brilliant, and it's exactly the kind of detail that separates good sneaker design from iconic sneaker design. The primary release generating the most buzz is the Nike Air DT Max 96 Low in what's being called the legendary colorway. These are player-exclusive versions of Coach Prime's signature line, but with Shedeur's own distinct identity woven throughout. Multiple shades of purple dominate the design. Metallic accents catch light and demand attention. The legendary branding on the heel ties the entire aesthetic together. These aren't just his dad's shoes with a different color scheme. These are Shedeur Sanders' signature pieces that happen to connect to a family legacy while establishing something entirely new. The photos Coach Prime shared revealed several colorways in development. There's a brown pair that looks absolutely premium. Patent leather versions that industry observers have called some of the nastiest designs they've seen in years. Low top options in red and purple that might function as cleats for actual game use. The variety suggests Nike isn't just testing the market with one release. They're building an entire product line around Shedeur's brand. But the release generating the most anticipation is scheduled for April. Black player exclusive sneakers with ice blue bottoms that observers are calling cold-blooded. These feature Shedeur's personal logo, not Coach Prime's, establishing his individual identity within the Nike ecosystem. The ice blue sole adds a premium element that sneaker collectors immediately recognize as special. These aren't sitting on shelves at your local mall. These are the kind of releases that generate lines outside Foot Locker. The kind of drops that resell for multiples of retail price within hours. The kind of cultural moments that transcend sports and enter the broader conversation about fashion, style, and influence. Here's what makes this particularly significant. Besides Michael Vick back in his prime years, name another NFL player who's actually moved units with signature sneakers. You can't, can you? That's because football has never owned the sneaker game the way basketball does. Jordan built an empire. LeBron continues adding to his legacy. Kobe's line remains relevant years after his passing. Basketball players dominate the sneaker conversation. Football players get cleats. They get team-issued equipment. They get functional gear designed for performance rather than style. What they typically don't get is cultural sneaker relevance. Coach Prime was the exception. His Nike relationship produced signature shoes that actually sold, that actually created buzz, that actually made statements beyond the football field. Dayan understood that athletes could be fashion icons, brand builders, and cultural forces if they moved the right way. Now his son is picking up that exact torch and running with it in a completely different era. The social media landscape has changed. The influencer economy has changed. The relationship between athletes and fans has changed. And Shedeur is positioned perfectly to capitalize on all of it. The April release timing is strategic too. By then, Shedeur will be deep into off-season workouts, preparing for his opportunity to prove doubters wrong. Training camp will be approaching. The quarterback competition in Cleveland will be heating up. Media attention on the Browns will be intensifying. Every time cameras show Shedeur working out, he'll be wearing those black and ice blue legendary sneakers. Every pregame warm-up will become a marketing moment. Every social media post will drive traffic toward the product. Nike doesn't make these decisions accidentally. They understand timing. They understand momentum. They understand how to turn athletic performance into commercial success. And speaking of strategic timing, there's another element to watch closely. Rumors have been circulating that Shedeur might switch back to number 2. That's the jersey number he wore at Colorado. The number that became synonymous with his brand during those memorable seasons. The number that fans associate with his identity. If that switch happens, those number 12 Browns jerseys people already purchased become instant collector's items. And you know Nike is already planning the number 2 rollout, the corresponding colorways, the entire rebrand that would accompany such a move. Nike doesn't make billion-dollar mistakes. That's not hyperbole. That's historical fact. When you examine their track record of identifying superstar athletes before the rest of the world caught on, the pattern becomes undeniable. They signed Michael Jordan when he was a rookie and most basketball fans couldn't pick him out of a lineup. They locked up LeBron James when he was still in high school, before he'd played a single professional game. They saw Kobe Bryant's potential before he became the legend everyone now celebrates. Every single time, Nike recognized something that traditional evaluation missed. They understood that certain athletes possess qualities that can't be measured by combined drills or pro-day workouts. Charisma, presence, the ability to connect with audiences on a level that transcends statistics. Shedeur Sanders has all of it. The social media numbers alone justify Nike's investment. Shedeur commands attention in ways that traditional football metrics don't capture. His engagement rates rival established superstars with years of professional accomplishments. His content generates conversation. His presence on platforms like Instagram and Twitter creates organic buzz that marketing departments spend millions trying to manufacture. This matters more than most people realize. In today's athletic landscape, endorsement value isn't just about performance on the field. It's about cultural relevance. It's about the ability to move product. It's about connecting with younger demographics who consume sports differently than previous generations. Shedeur checks every box. His college production provided the foundation for Nike's confidence. At Colorado, Shedeur didn't just put up impressive statistics. He delivered them in pressure situations, on national television, with everyone watching. He performed when the lights were brightest. He elevated his game when it mattered most. He showed the kind of clutch gene that separates good quarterbacks from great ones. 4,134 passing yards in his final college season, 37 touchdowns, just 10 interceptions, an accuracy rate that placed him among the elite passers in college football. These weren't inflated numbers from a weak conference or a gimmick offense. These were legitimate, NFL translatable production metrics. The Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award doesn't go to overhyped prospects. It recognizes the best upperclassman quarterback in college football, the player who combines on-field excellence with character and leadership. Shedeur won that award because he earned it, because his performance demanded recognition. And yet, 31 NFL teams passed on him. Multiple times. This is where Nike's evaluation diverges dramatically from the league's evaluation. NFL scouts apparently focused on perceived weaknesses while ignoring demonstrated strengths. They questioned arm strength while dismissing accuracy. They worried about scheme fit while overlooking proven production. They let concerns about the coach prime factor override obvious talent. Nike doesn't operate that way. Their business model requires identifying value before markets fully recognize it. They need to sign athletes early, build relationships before prices explode, and position themselves ahead of competitors who wait for consensus to emerge. If Nike waited for NFL validation before investing in Shedeur, they would have missed the opportunity entirely. Some other brand would have locked him up. Some competitor would have recognized what was obvious to anyone paying attention. Instead, Nike moved early. They committed resources. They designed products. They built marketing campaigns. And when the draft slide happened, they stayed the course because their evaluation never changed. The Sports Illustrated reporting makes Nike's position clear. They've heavily invested in Shedeur. They're promoting him on social media like he's a franchise cornerstone. They've designed player-exclusive products in team colorways. They've leaned into his legendary branding during practice and pre-game content. This isn't experimental. This isn't testing the waters. This is full commitment to an athlete Nike believes will deliver massive returns. And here's what makes their confidence even more compelling. Nike has access to data that the public never sees. They track engagement metrics across platforms. They measure audience response to content. They analyze purchasing patterns and consumer behavior and brand association. Their evaluation isn't based on feelings or hunches. It's based on hard numbers that prove Shedeur moves the needle. The NFL measures athletes by 40-yard dash times and vertical leap measurements. Nike measures athletes by their ability to sell product and influence culture. Shedeur excels at the metrics Nike cares about most. That's why this partnership exists. That's why Nike didn't flinch when the draft slide happened. That's why they're treating a fifth-round quarterback like a first overall superstar. Because to Nike, draft position is irrelevant. Market potential is everything. And Shedeur Sanders has market potential that most players drafted ahead of him will never match. The 31 teams that passed on Shedeur were evaluating a quarterback. Nike was evaluating a brand, and their brand evaluation told them something that changed everything. This kid is special. Invest now before everyone else figures it out. The Nike deal tells one story, but what's happening inside the Cleveland Browns facility tells another. Since arriving in Cleveland, Shedeur has found himself at the center of constant speculation. Reports about first-team reps, rumors about his relationship with the coaching staff, questions about whether he'll actually get a fair opportunity to compete for the starting job. The noise hasn't stopped since draft night. Head coach Kevin Stefanski runs a system that demands specific quarterback traits. His offense relies on timing, precision, and the ability to make quick decisions within structure. On paper, Shedeur's skill set should translate perfectly to what Stefanski wants. His accuracy is elite. His decision-making is advanced. His experience running pro-style concepts at Colorado prepared him for exactly this kind of system. But rumors suggest the relationship hasn't been entirely smooth. Reports have surfaced about friction over practice reps, about philosophical differences in approach, about the typical growing pains that occur when a rookie quarterback enters an established program. None of this is particularly unusual. Most rookie quarterbacks face similar challenges during their first professional offseason. What makes Shedeur's situation different is the spotlight. Everything he does gets magnified. Every interaction with coaches becomes a storyline. Every practice rep gets analyzed and debated on social media. He can't develop quietly like other fifth-round picks. The attention that comes with being Coach Prime's son and having the Nike deal means every moment becomes content. The Dillon Gabriel factor adds another layer of complexity. Cleveland signed Gabriel, the former Oregon quarterback, creating genuine competition for the starting position. On the surface, this seems like standard roster construction. Teams typically bring in multiple quarterbacks and let competition determine the outcome. But the dynamics here are different. Gabriel brings his own following and his own expectations. The Browns now have two quarterbacks with strong personal brands competing for one job. The content opportunities are obvious. The tension is inevitable. The scrutiny will be intense throughout training camp and preseason. For Shedeur, this competition represents opportunity rather than obstacle. He spent his entire life proving doubters wrong. At Jackson State, people questioned whether he could perform against limited competition. He dominated. At Colorado, people wondered whether he could handle Power 5 defenses. He thrived. Now in Cleveland, people are asking whether he can beat out a more experienced quarterback for the starting job. The pattern suggests Shedeur will rise to the challenge. That's what he does. That's who he is. The jersey number situation adds intrigue to everything happening in Cleveland. Shedeur currently wears number 12 with the Browns, but strong rumors indicate he might switch back to number 2, the number he wore throughout college, the number that fans associate with his brand. This potential switch carries significance beyond simple preference. Number 2 was Shedeur's identity at Colorado. It appeared on merchandise. It defined his visual brand. It connected him to the fanbase that followed his journey. Switching back would represent a reclaiming of that identity, a statement that Cleveland is just the latest chapter rather than a complete restart. For Nike, a number change creates new product opportunities. the legendary sneakers would get updated colorways. New jersey designs would hit the market. The entire visual brand would shift in ways that generate fresh consumer interest. It's the kind of strategic move that benefits everyone involved, except maybe the fans who already bought number 12 jerseys. Those jerseys would instantly become collector's items, vintage before they're even a year old. The secondary market value would spike as fans realize they own a piece of history from Shedeur's brief time wearing a number that wasn't truly his. The bigger picture in Cleveland extends beyond roster decisions and jersey numbers. The Browns are navigating something unprecedented. They have a fifth-round quarterback who commands more endorsement attention than most first-round picks across the entire league. They have a player whose every move generates national headlines. They have a situation where the traditional power dynamics between team and player don't apply. Most fifth-round picks spend their rookie years fighting for roster spots while staying invisible. They do extra work. They study film obsessively. They earn opportunities through quiet dedication and humble persistence. The team controls the narrative. The team decides when and how the player receives attention. Shedeur's Nike deal changes all of that. He arrived in Cleveland with a platform that most veterans spend years building. His brand exists independently of what the Browns choose to do with him. His commercial value doesn't depend on getting playing time or earning starts. This creates fascinating dynamics that the NFL has rarely seen. How does a coaching staff manage a fifth-round pick who doesn't need the team's platform to build his brand? How do veterans respond to a rookie who commands superstar endorsement attention before proving himself professionally? How does an organization navigate the media circus that follows Coach Prime's son everywhere he goes? Cleveland is learning the answers to these questions in real time, and the entire league is watching closely because whatever happens next will set precedents for future situations. Section 6. Why NFL owners are losing sleep over this. 800 words. The sneakers are just the surface. What's really happening here runs much deeper than product releases and marketing campaigns. NFL owners operate within a system designed to maintain specific power dynamics. Teams control player narratives. Organizations decide when athletes receive endorsement opportunities. The draft process determines value. The entire structure exists to ensure that ownership remains in control of how players are perceived, promoted, and compensated. Shedeur Sanders is exposing the fragility of that system. By building his brand before getting drafted, by securing major endorsements independent of NFL validation, by maintaining commercial value regardless of where he was selected, Shedeur demonstrated something that terrifies the ownership class. Players don't need teams to become stars anymore. Think about what that means for the traditional NFL business model. For decades, owners have leveraged their platforms as bargaining chips. Want endorsement opportunities? Perform well for us first. Want media attention? Earn it through the system we control. Want to build a personal brand? Do it on our terms, on our timeline, with our approval. Shedeur bypassed all of it. He walked into the league with Nike and Gatorade backing already secured. He arrived with social media influence that doesn't depend on playing time. He showed up with a brand that exists independently of whatever the Cleveland Browns decide to do with him. If other players follow this blueprint, the entire leverage structure shifts. Suddenly, draft position matters less because athletes can build value through other channels. Suddenly, teams can't control narratives as easily because players have their own platforms with massive reach. Suddenly, the power dynamics that owners have spent decades constructing start crumbling. That's why the response to Shedeur's Nike deal has been so visceral. That's why established voices in the NFL media have questioned whether he deserves this attention. That's why the criticism feels disproportionate to what's actually happening. The establishment is protecting itself, and Shedeur represents a threat to everything they've built. Consider the precedent this sets for future draft classes. If a projected first-rounder can secure signature sneaker deals before getting selected, what stops every top prospect from doing the same? If endorsement value doesn't depend on where you're drafted, what's the point of tanking for higher picks? If players can build commercial empires independent of team platforms, what leverage do organizations really have? These questions make owners uncomfortable because they don't have good answers. The old rules are breaking down. The new reality is emerging. And Shedeur is at the forefront of that transition. The frustration extends beyond theoretical concerns about power dynamics. There's a practical element too. 31 teams passed on Shedeur. They made deliberate decisions to let him slide. They evaluated him and concluded he wasn't worth selecting with their picks. Now Nike, a company whose entire business depends on identifying stars before they emerge, is telling those same teams they made a massive mistake. Every signature sneaker that sells, every marketing campaign that generates buzz, every social media post that goes viral becomes a reminder that the NFL's evaluation process failed. General managers don't like being told they're wrong. Owners don't enjoy watching outside companies profit from players they passed on. The draft is supposed to be the definitive statement of player value. Nike is proving that statement means less than everyone assumed. The league's response has been predictable. Unnamed sources questioning Shedeur's arm strength, reports emphasizing controversy rather than talent, a general narrative suggesting he hasn't earned this level of attention. It's the establishment pushing back against someone who threatens their control. But here's what the owners don't seem to understand. This isn't about Shedeur specifically. This is about the future of the player-team relationship across the entire league. Social media has democratized platform building. Athletes can now connect directly with fans without going through team media departments. Commercial opportunities exist outside traditional endorsement structures. The genie is out of the bottle. Shedeur didn't create these conditions. He's just the first high-profile example of a player fully capitalizing on them. Other players are watching closely. Other agents are taking notes. Other rookies entering future drafts are recognizing that building a personal brand before the professional level creates leverage that can't be taken away by a disappointing draft night. The NFL can resist this shift. Owners can complain about attention being distributed unfairly. Media allies can continue questioning whether athletes deserve endorsement before proving themselves professionally. But resistance won't change the trajectory. Players are going to build their own brands. They're going to secure their own endorsements. They're going to control their own narratives. And they're going to do it whether the establishment approves or not. Shedeur Sanders just showed everyone how it's done. And that's why the league is so scared. To truly understand what Shedeur is accomplishing, you have to understand the path his father blazed 3 decades ago. Deion Sanders didn't just play football and baseball at elite levels. He transformed what it meant to be a professional athlete in America. Before Deion, football players were football players. They showed up on Sundays, did their jobs, and mostly stayed invisible off the field. The sneaker game belonged to basketball. The fashion influence belonged to basketball. The cultural relevance belonged to basketball. Deion changed everything. He understood that athletic performance was just the foundation. Building on that foundation required personality, style, and an understanding of how entertainment worked. He brought flash to a sport that valued grit. He brought showmanship to a league that preferred humble professionalism. He made football players cool in ways they'd never been before. Most importantly, Deion proved that football players could sell sneakers. His Nike relationship produced signature lines that actually moved units, that actually created buzz, that actually competed with basketball products for consumer attention. Nobody had done that before. Very few have done it since. Mike Vick came closest during his Atlanta years. His Nike deal generated genuine sneaker culture interest. But even Vick couldn't sustain the momentum that Deion established. The football sneaker space remained largely dormant, waiting for someone to pick up where prime time left off. Enter Shedeur. The family connection is obvious but also somewhat limiting as a framework. Yes, Shedeur benefits from his father's relationships, reputation, and understanding of the endorsement landscape. Yes, doors open more easily when you're Coach Prime's son. Yes, the Sanders name carries weight that creates opportunities other players don't receive. But that framing misses something important. Shedeur isn't just benefiting from his father's legacy. He's building his own legacy in a completely different era with completely different tools and completely different challenges. Deion became famous through television. His highlight plays aired on SportsCenter. His personality came through in carefully produced interviews and commercials. The relationship with fans was mediated through traditional media structures. Shedeur is becoming famous through direct connection. His social media presence lets fans feel like they know him personally. His content creation builds relationships without media intermediaries. His brand exists in the phones and feeds of millions of people who interact with him daily rather than weekly. The skills required to succeed in Dayan's era don't automatically translate to Shedeur's era. Understanding television doesn't mean understanding TikTok. Being compelling in 30-second commercial spots doesn't guarantee being compelling in Instagram stories. The game has changed completely. Shedeur has mastered the new game. His engagement rates demonstrate genuine connection with audiences. His content feels authentic rather than produced. His brand voice resonates with younger demographics who consume sports differently than any previous generation. This is where the Nike investment makes the most sense. The company recognized that Shedeur represents the evolution of what Coach Prime started. He's not just continuing a legacy. He's adapting that legacy for a new era where different skills matter and different platforms drive influence. The legendary branding connects past and present perfectly. Dayan was legendary. Shedeur is becoming legendary. The family narrative writes itself while still allowing space for Shedeur to establish individual identity. The sneaker designs reflect this balance. They draw from Coach Prime's signature line while incorporating elements that are distinctly Shedeur's. The colorways, the logos, the subtle details all signal continuity while asserting independence. You can see the father's influence. You can also see the son's vision. This matters for Nike's long-term strategy. They're not just signing an athlete. They're investing in a family brand that spans generations. Coach Prime continues driving interest and sales. Shedeur represents the future of that brand identity. Together, they offer something no other athlete family can match. The cultural implications extend beyond sneakers. The Sanders family is redefining what sports families can accomplish. They're showing that legacy doesn't have to be limiting, that children of famous athletes can build their own empires rather than living in shadows. Other athlete families are watching. Other parents with famous sports backgrounds are recognizing that platform can transfer across generations if handled correctly. Other young athletes growing up in spotlight situations are seeing that the attention can become advantage rather than burden. Shedeur's success validates a model that others will follow. Not every athlete's child will have his talent or opportunity, but the blueprint he's creating will influence how sports families approach branding, endorsements, and platform building for years to come. Coach Prime created the template. Shedeur is updating it for a new generation. And Nike is betting that this father-son combination will continue generating value for decades. When those legendary sneakers hit shelves this April, remember this moment. Remember when 31 teams passed on Shedeur Sanders. Remember when analysts questioned whether he deserved major endorsements. Remember when the establishment pushed back against a fifth-round quarterback getting superstar treatment. Then watch what happens next. Because Shedeur Sanders isn't just selling sneakers. He's selling the belief that draft position doesn't define destiny. He's proving that athletes can build empires on their own terms. He's showing an entire generation that the gatekeepers don't control who becomes legendary anymore. The NFL ownership class can stay furious. The traditional media can keep questioning. The doubters can keep doubting. None of it changes the trajectory. Shedeur already won. He won before the first snap. He won before the first start. He won the moment Nike decided to treat a fifth-rounder like a franchise cornerstone and never looked back. The legendary branding isn't just marketing. It's prophecy. It's a statement that some athletes are born for greatness regardless of what systems try to limit them. And every time someone laces up those purple and black sneakers, every time that upside-down legendary text flashes on camera, the message will be clear. The establishment can hate it, but they absolutely cannot stop it.